important story. And this one is about it was funny because yesterday I was talking to some hotel general managers, and they were asking me what I thought about this. And it was funny because I'm not an expert at this, but I thought, well, this is something important. And of course, we hope that this is peacefully resolved. But this is talking about India and Pakistan. And as you know, India and Pakistan have fought several wars. There's a lot of unrest, and recently there was a terrorist attack in India, and India, as usual, blamed Pakistan for this because it's very complicated. But anyhow, I think we should look at this story, and we can see if there's some new words that we can learn. So here it says, dozens killed as India, Pakistan exchange fire, okay? Now, when it says exchange fire, what does that mean? Do you know? When we say exchange fire, what does that basically mean? You know what it means? What? War, but fire means shooting, okay? So when you're shooting at somebody, we say they fired at them. Now, fire, of course, has many different meanings. Fire can be 火, right? Like we can say there's a fire, outside, or there's a fire in the building. But to fire also means to shoot at somebody. So you can say they fired at the other soldiers, or I fired at him with my gun. Means to shoot at somebody. Now, of course, fire has yet other meanings. We can say fire is like if you're a 老板 at a company and you have somebody who's not a very good employee, you might fire them, right? You say, you're fired. I think you probably know it's quite famous that Donald Trump, our president today, he used to have a TV show, and it was called The Apprentice, okay? It's a little bit like the 实习生, And in this TV show, this is years ago, before, of course, he was president. And his most famous line on the TV show was he would have these people working for him, and if they didn't do a good job, Donald Trump would say, "You're fired." Okay. And so basically, to fire somebody means to let them go, they lose their job. But here, of course, this fire, when we talk about fire, it means to shoot. Okay. So when we say to exchange fire, it means they're shooting at each other. Exchange usually means I give you something and you give me something. But here, to exchange fire means to shoot at back and forth, to shoot at each other. Okay? So let's say that together. Exchange fire. Exchange fire. Right. So if you say the soldiers, or maybe you can say the policeman, the police officer, and the robbers exchange fire. They were shooting at each other. Okay, so this is pretty serious because it says dozens killed. How many is a dozen? Well, 12, yeah. But when we say dozens, in Chinese we say, what is it? We say 几十个, right? It means tens. But of course in English we can say tens. Sometimes we say it that way, but usually we say dozens. We use that word dozen, which is 12. Right? When you go to the supermarket, you buy a dozen eggs, right? Well, I know in Taiwan sometimes you can buy 10 eggs or 8 eggs or whatever, but in America, a dozen is we always buy eggs by the dozen. Okay, so then it says here, plea for peace. World leaders called for a de-escalation on the border following the clashes, in which at least 38 people were killed and 3 Indian fighter jets crashed. Okay, this is serious, right? So what does this word plea mean? When you plea for something, what would be a kind of another way of saying plea? What? Yeah, pray kind of, but plea is more like to what? If you plea for something, what are you doing? Ask, but you're asking, I'll give you a clue. The word starts with a B. If you beg, yes. If you beg for something, you say, please, give me this. I really need this, So a plea is like to really beg for something, to really ask for something in a very strong way. So you can say a plea for help, right? Sometimes people give out a plea for help. They're like, help me, I really need help. Can you really help me? And they're saying it in that way. So why don't we say together, plea. Plea. Now here it says a plea for peace. Now, it's interesting, it's not that India or Pakistan are pleading for peace, it's world leaders are pleading for peace. They're saying, please, Let's restore peace. Let's not fight. Okay, so world leaders called for a de-escalation. Now, this is an interesting word. First of all, the second part, it says escalation. Now, we've talked about this word before. To escalate, what does that mean? Does anyone know? Think about that. To escalate. And this is a good word. Does anyone know what it means? Actually, it means to go up. Okay. To escalate. Okay, so I think you remember, you all know, and I've talked about this many times. If you go to a 百货公司, right, and you stand on those stairs and the stairs are moving, right, and it goes up the stairs, that's called an escalator. Okay? Escalator. Okay? So you ride the escalator and it goes up. Now, of course, as I've said many times, escalators also go down. But anyhow, we still call it an escalator. So anyhow, to escalate means to increase or to make larger or to go up. Okay? So if we have a conflict, let's say we have India, Hindu and Pakistan, and they're fighting, and the fighting escalates, what that means is the fighting is increasing. It's going up. It's getting worse. But here it says the world leaders called for a de-escalation. What does that mean? If we think if escalate means to increase, then what does de-escalate mean? To decrease, yes, to go down, okay? So we could say as a 动词, we could say to de-escalate, okay? We could say it that way. But here, of course, this is a 名词, so we say a de-escalation, okay? So this is a good word. Okay, so let's say these together. To escalate. To escalate. And then let's add this here. To de-escalate. To de-escalate. Okay, and then remember I talked about those moving stairs. What do we call that? Let's say it together. Escalator. Escalator. Okay, and then let's say this as a 名词. Escalation. Escalation. De-escalation. De-escalation. Okay, so world leaders are calling for a de-escalation on the border. And what's a border? Remember? What's a border? Yes, the line of the country. Now, it doesn't have to be a country. It could be like, there's a border between Taichung Xian, or not Taichung Xian, it's Taichung Shi now, but Taichung Shi and Miaoli Xian, right? Or Taichung Shi and Zhanghua Xian. There's a border. But often here, of course, we're talking about the border between India and Pakistan. So they call for de-escalation on the border following the clashes. Now, clashes is just another word for what? What's the simple word? Fighting, yeah. So clash is a fight. If you clash with somebody. Now, let me add something. When we clash with somebody, it doesn't mean that we're always punching them, like physically, violently. I could say I clashed with him on this idea. Like maybe we had a disagreement or an argument. I could also use the word clash. Now, clash is a very interesting word because we use it in many different ways. I'll give you an example. Sometimes when you wear clothes, right, and one color does not match the other color. Maybe they're just really, they do not go well together. We say those colors clash with each other, okay? So I'm trying to think of a clashing color. If you wore, I don't know, this is what comes to my mind. I'm sorry if you've ever worn this, but if I wore yellow and pink, okay, you'd be like, oh, that looks terrible. That's awful, okay? And you probably say those two colors really clash with each other, okay? So we would say they almost like they're fighting with each other. They're not good. So why don't we say it together? Clashes. Clashes. Okay, so following the clashes in which, okay, or during which, we could say during which or in which, at least 38 people were killed, and 3 Indian fighter jets, of course this means like 战斗机, right, were crashed. They went down, okay? So this is a big deal, and let's go ahead and see what the article says, okay? So it says here, India and Pakistan yesterday exchanged heavy artillery fire along their contested frontier after New Delhi launched deadly missile strikes on its arch-rival in the worst violence between the nuclear-armed neighbors in 2 decades. Okay, so first of all, we have these two countries. Of course, I think you all know India. Excuse me. Pakistan is right next door. Okay, why don't we say that together? Pakistan. Pakistan. Right. As you know, probably, India and Pakistan used to all be part of British India, you know, when it was the Ingguo Zhimingdi. And then, of course, after they became independent, there were 2 separate countries. Pakistan is more Huijiaotu, you know, Muslim, and India is more Hindu Jiao. Okay, so India and Pakistan yesterday exchanged. Okay, so here's that word exchange. They're shooting at each other. Heavy, I mean, artillery fire. Now, we talked about this word before, but artillery is like the big guns, right? Not the guns that the soldiers shoot, but the big guns. You put in the shells and you put it in and it shoots long distance. We call that artillery, okay? Let's say that together. Artillery. Artillery. Right. So this is, that's why they say heavy artillery, because it's a big gun, okay? Along their contested frontier. Now there's 2 words here that are interesting. First of all, this word frontier. We just talked about the word border, right? But does anyone know what a frontier is? It's a slightly different word. Let me explain. A frontier is like the edge or the far edge of your territory. I'll tell you where this word got used a lot in history. In America, early on when we were still growing as a country, right? Remember, America started in the eastern part of North America, right? You know, Shin England and all down the East Coast. And then slowly the Americans spread to the west, right? So in the early days when America was expanding towards the west, all that western land, it was not settled yet, and it was not yet a state. It was just open land, right, to the west. We call that the frontier, because the frontier is like that far edge of your territory. So we say if he's going to the frontier, it means he's moving out to the edge of your territory, like the far end of your territory, like out there. You know, it's not part of your current territory. So here, when we say frontier, I think the idea is that it's the edge of the Indian territory, and it's the edge of the Pakistan territory. It's right on that far end of their territory, of their land, okay? So we use the word, here we say frontier. Now, of course, we could say border. We just said the word border, but they use the word frontier. So why don't we say this together, frontier. Frontier. Okay. And then this word here is very interesting. This is a 形容词. If something is contested, okay? Now you might think contest, that means what? 比赛, right? But if something is contested, what does that mean? Does anyone know? Maybe we could say it that way, but I think contested means usually, it means that they're fighting over it. It means that something that is being fought over, okay? So let me give you an example. If you say, let me put this in a different way. It means there's a disagreement over it, okay? So I'll give you an example. Let's say we have a competition, 比赛, right? And the judge, you know, they say, okay, he won the competition, right? He won. But somebody else is like, no, you're wrong. That guy won, okay? And they're like, no, that person won. So we say the result of this contest is being contested. It means that people are disagreeing with it. They're arguing over it. They're fighting over it, Okay? I'll tell you where this word gets used a lot. 选举, elections. So let's say we have an election. They say, okay, he won the election. He's our new president. And somebody's like, no, that's not right. That's unfair. He cheated, or he's not the right person, or that person won, not that guy. And then we say the results of the election are contested. So basically it means there is a disagreement. Not everybody agrees. So here it means this frontier is being contested. I think you know the history. India and Pakistan, they have a border, but they don't agree where the border is. Pakistan says, well, this is our territory. And India says, no, that's our territory. That's not your territory. So we say that border or that frontier is contested. There is a disagreement. Okay, so let's say this together. Contested. Contested. Contested frontier. Contested frontier. Okay. So they're shooting at each other across this contested frontier after New Delhi. Now, New Delhi, of course, is the shoudu of India, right? So it means India, the Indian government. Launched, of course, I think you remember, we launched a rocket, right? 飞弹 into the sky. We launch a new ship. We launch a new company. It means to begin, to start, right? They launched deadly missile strikes. Okay, missile, of course, is 飞弹. Strike is attack, right? So 飞弹攻击, I guess. And deadly, of course, means what? It killed people. If something is deadly, it means people died. So they began deadly missile strikes, okay? On what? On its arch rival. So first of all, let's say this again. Launched. Deadly. Missile strikes. Missile strikes. Okay, on who? On its arch rival. Now, this is a very, very good word. And I actually don't think we've actually learned this word before. First of all, you see in here there's another word. What is a rival? R-I-V-A-L. What does that mean? A rival is your what? You say, he is my rival. Yes, very good. Opposite side. It's like your 对方, right? It's like, now rival could be your enemy, right? But it could be, a rival could also be somebody, let's say you're in a 比赛, right? You're in a contest, and your rival is the person who is 比赛 against you, right? Like, for example, if we have two teams, 足球队, and we say this team is my team, and then that team is our rivals. It means they are the other side. But here we have another word, arch, A-R-C-H. Arch means top, the most, okay? So your arch rival is your biggest rival, your biggest enemy, or your biggest competitor. It's your main competitor, okay? So I think this is a very good word to know. If you say, I don't know, if we look at the world today, for example, and we talk about 美国, right? And we say, who is America's biggest or main arch rival? I think it's pretty obvious, right? China, right? They're the arch rival. When America thinks of who is competing against America, which country is trying to match America or go above America, they always think of China. So we say China is America's arch rival. We could also say America is China's arch rival. You could say it either way. So this is a very good word. Let's say this word here first, rival. Rival. Arch rival. Arch rival. Okay, so they're attacking their arch rival, which of course is Pakistan, in the worst violence between the nuclear armed neighbors in 2 decades, in 20 years. Okay, now it's funny, it's not funny, but it's interesting. Every time I see articles about Pakistan and India about to fight each other or fighting each other, they always mention this. They say they are nuclear armed neighbors. Okay, what does nuclear mean? Nuclear power, but well, it's not nuclear power. Taiwan has nuclear power, or did have nuclear power. But here it means nuclear what? Weapons, yes. 核武, yeah. So nuclear arm means 核武, neighbor. So both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons, okay? And that's very dangerous, of course, because if they really start fighting, everybody thinks, what if they use nuclear weapons to attack their neighbor? Okay, so it's very dangerous. So why don't we say together, nuclear, nuclear, nuclear armed, nuclear armed. Right, armed means like they have weapons, right? They have military weapons. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and read this then. Follow after me. India and Pakistan. Pakistan. Yesterday exchanged heavy artillery fire along their contested frontier. Okay, let's say it again. Contested frontier. After New Delhi launched deadly missile strikes. Missile strikes on its arch rival. In the worst violence between the nuclear-armed neighbors in 2 decades. Okay, so this is the worst fighting in 20 years between the two countries. Okay, so let's go on. It says at least 38 deaths were reported, with Islamabad saying 26 civilians were killed by the Indian strikes and firing along the border, and New Delhi adding at least 12 dead from Pakistani shelling. Okay, so let's look at this. 38 deaths were reported. Islamabad, of course, is the shoudu of Pakistan, right? So when we say Islamabad, we mean the Pakistan government. Let's say this again. Islamabad. Islamabad. Interesting, because what does Islam mean? Does anyone know? It means 回教徒. You know, if you say he believes in Islam or he follows Islam, it means he's a 回教徒. Okay, but the name of their shoudu is Islamabad. Okay, saying that 26 civilians, and what is a civilian? Do you remember this word? What is a civilian? Yeah, what's the opposite of a civilian? A soldier, yes, very good. So basically, if I'm a soldier, then I am not a civilian. But if you're not a soldier, then you are a civilian. I think all of us are civilians, okay? So let's say it together, civilians. Civilians. Okay, so Islamabad, Pakistan says 26 non-soldiers were killed by Indian strikes, or again, this is another word for attacks, and firing along the border. So they were shooting on the border, okay? And New Delhi, of course, this again is the Indian government, adding at least 12 dead from Pakistani shelling. Now, shelling, again, remember we said that word artillery, the big guns, right? So when we say shelling, it means you're shooting those big guns at somebody. This is not like shooting a small gun. This is a big gun, and we call that shelling. You can say we were shelled by the enemy, okay? I'll give you a good example I'm sure you all know is in the 1950s, actually in the 60s and 70s too, but especially in the 1950s, Jinmen and Matsu were shelled a lot by China, right? They were shelling those islands. They were shooting big guns at those islands. That's why now you can go to Jinmen and buy those beautiful knives, right? Those daozi, right? I remember when I went to Jinmen, I went to the shop and they had all these beautiful knives, and they're like, okay, this is from Chinese shelling. Okay. Okay, so let's read this together. At least 38 deaths were reported, with Islamabad saying 26 civilians were killed by the Indian strikes and firing along the border. And New Delhi adding at least 12 dead from Pakistani shelling. Shelling. Right. Now, Pakistani means it just becomes when you add the I, it becomes a 形容词, right? We say Indian, right? So for Pakistan, we say Pakistani, okay? Pakistani. Okay. Okay. Let's go on. Any questions about any of these things? Okay, if you have questions, just ask. Okay, so let's go on. It says, the fighting came 2 weeks after New Delhi blamed Islamabad for backing an attack on the Indian-run side of disputed Kashmir. Now, I think you all know this place, right? Kashmir. How do you say this in Chinese? Yeah, it's a very, very, there's a lot of problem there because both India and Pakistan claim Kashmir. You know, India says that belongs to us. Now, I think right now it's mostly under Indian control. But Pakistan has said, well, no, that belongs to us. You know, it's up in the mountains. It's actually a beautiful place. They're very famous for their wool, you know. They have sheep, and they make this beautiful, soft wool that you can make into sweaters and clothing. So why don't we say together, Kashmir. Kashmir. Okay, so it says here, disputed Kashmir, okay? So disputed means a dispute. Excuse me. What is a dispute? What's another word for dispute? If you say, you and I have a dispute, what does that mean? You and I have a argument or disagreement, right? You could say, right now there's a dispute between me and him over some money. Maybe he says, well, I owe you money, or you owe me money, and I say, no, I don't owe you money. And that's a dispute. It's a disagreement over something. So let's say it together, dispute. Dispute. Now, if you say we disputed something, that can become a 动词. Dispute can be a 名词 or a 动词. Okay, we disputed something. But here it becomes a 形容词. We say it is the disputed Kashmir means there's disagreement. It's very similar to the word, remember we just talked about the word contested? We talked about that. We could say contested Kashmir, but I think disputed here is a better word. So we say disputed Kashmir. They're disagreements or arguments over Kashmir. Okay, so this fighting came 2 weeks after New Delhi blamed Islamabad. So they blamed them. They said, it's your fault, okay, for what? For backing. Now backing, what's another word for backing? Starts with an S. Yes, supporting, 支持, right? An attack on the Indian-run side of disputed Kashmir. So there was an attack. Of course, I think you know there was like a 恐怖 terrorist attack on some 观光客. I think there were like 26 people killed or something like that. But they were just travelers. They were having a good time, and some 恐怖分子 came in and killed them. And so India blamed Pakistan for this attack. They said, you supported these 恐怖分子, okay? And this happened. Actually, this is not the first time that's happened. This has happened before. Okay, so let's read this. The fighting came 2 weeks after New Delhi blamed Islamabad for backing an attack on the Indian-run side of disputed Kashmir. Let's say that again. Disputed Kashmir. Right. Okay. You know, actually, I'll say once again, if someone buys a sweater, you know, and you say, oh, that's a beautiful sweater. What's it made out of? And they say, oh, this is a cashmere sweater. It's made from that wool. Yeah, it's very soft, very nice. What? Yeah, very expensive. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I know. I if I own any cashmere sweaters. I don't know if I do or not. Maybe I do. Probably I don't. It's quite expensive. If I did, somebody gave it to me because I don't think I would buy it. Okay, so here let's go on. It says the South Asian neighbors have fought multiple wars over the divided territory since they were carved out of the subcontinent at the end of British rule in 1947. Let's just read this. The latest violence exceeds India's strikes in 2019. Okay, so when we talk about India and Pakistan, that region is known as South Asia. Now, sometimes I see a mistake. I see people write, they want to write Dongnanya, and they just write South Asia. It's actually not. Dongnanya is Southeast Asia, right? Like Taiwan and Myanmar and all that, But South Asia would be India and Mongolia, Bangladesh and Pakistan, that region. So we call that South Asian neighbors have fought multiple wars, many wars, over the divided territory, over this Kashmir. So Kashmir is divided. India controls one part, Pakistan controls another part, since they were carved out of the subcontinent. Now, this is a very interesting word. Do you know the word continent? Of course, like we say Asia is a continent, Europe is a continent, North America is a continent. But notice here they add this subcontinent, because although India and Pakistan, that region, are part of the Asian continent, they're actually their own special region, right? If you look at India, it's this area, it comes down, and Pakistan's up there, and on the side, and we call that whole region, we call that a subcontinent, okay? It's interesting because I don't see this word used very often outside of India. I can't think of many other places in the world where they say, oh, that's a subcontinent. But because of India and Pakistan, the unique, dili, the geography, they often call that the subcontinent, or sometimes they say the Indian subcontinent. Okay, so let's say this together. Continent. Continent. Subcontinent. Subcontinent. So this is interesting. Since they were carved out, okay? Now carve, you know what carve means? What is carve? Normally, when we say to carve something, what does that mean? Yeah. So, if you want to make your new gaizhang or something, right, they have to carve it, right? Or if you want to make a diaoke, like a sculpture, you carve it, right? But here it says to carve out of the subcontinent. So it's almost like here's the subcontinent, Indian, before it was under Ingwa, like British rule. And then they carved out part of it, and they said, okay, this belongs to Pakistan, and okay, this part belongs to India. So they kind of like separated it. They carved it out. So that's the word they're using. That it's kind of an interesting idea to carve out. I'll tell you what else we carve. One of my favorite things is, I talked about 美国, we love to eat 火鸡大餐, right? Turkey. So when you have a turkey, a 火鸡, but it doesn't have to be a turkey. It could be any big piece of meat, right? You have to carve the meat, right? So you have a big 火鸡, and then somebody, usually, if it's at an American family, usually the father, the papa that's his job, and he has a big knife and a big fork, and he starts to cut the meat off the turkey, right? You can't just have this big turkey. So you have to carve it. And we say, okay, his job is to carve the turkey. Or you can say, I carved out some meat from the turkey. Now, of course, you can carve a chicken. You can carve, beef or pork or anything, but ham, 火腿. But yeah, we use that word, the same word. Why don't we say it together? To carve. To carve. Carved out. Carved out. Okay. And so then the latest violence exceeds. It's greater than India's strike. So in 2019, India attacked Pakistan. I remember that. There was a little bit of fighting there. Okay, so let's read this. The South Asian neighbors have fought multiple wars. Multiple wars. over the divided territory since they were carved out of the subcontinent. Subcontinent. At the end of British rule in 1947. The latest violence exceeds India's strikes in 2019. What does this word mean, exceed? Means to do what? If you exceed something, it means to go above or beyond. Okay? So you can say, let me think of a good example of this. Well, let's see. The money I made this is not really true, but I'm using an example. The money I made this year exceeded the money I made last year. It means the money I made this year was more than the money I made last year. Okay? The money I made exceeded. Okay? Or you can say the amount of production, this year's production, 生产力, right, exceeded last year's production. Okay, it means it was more than, right? Now, I'll give you a very good expression. This is actually a good one. If you say, let's say you have a student or you have a son or daughter and you tell them to do something. You say, okay, I want you to do this job. You have a project. And they finish the project and they do a really good job. You think, wow, that was really good. Like, I don't know, maybe you say, I want you to clean your room. And you think, maybe they'll just clean a little bit. But they do a beautiful job. They clean their room completely. And you say, wow, your work or what you did exceeded my expectations. Yes. And what is an expectation? Expectation means what? 期待, right? 期望, right? So if you say, he exceeded my expectations, or you exceeded my expectations, it means I expected you would do something, but wow, you did even more. You did a great job. This is a very positive expression, right? So you can say, he exceeded my expectations when he did this work. Or the way he did that exceeded my expectations. Or this, or here's another way of saying it. Let's say you go to a vacation and you go to some place you've never been. And maybe you read some,文章, and they say, oh, this place is really beautiful. You should go there. The food is good. The people are friendly. It's very beautiful. And so you say, okay, I'm going to travel there. I think it'll be pretty good. And you go there, and it's amazing, right? You're like, wow, this is the best place I've ever been. And you can say, wow, that place, that country exceeded my expectations. Or this vacation exceeded my expectations. It was much better than I thought it would be. So this is a very good expression. It's good to remember this one because it's a great way of praising something. 赞美 something. You say, wow, that was so good. Okay, so let's say it together. Exceeded my expectations. Exceeded my expectations. Right. Okay. Now, I have to say, there's probably another way, a negative way of saying it. If you say your work is below my expectations, or or disappointed my expectations, it means it's not what I expected. It's less than what I expected. Okay. So it was below my expectations, or did not reach. You could say did not reach my expectations. REACH. It did not meet. MEET. It did not meet my expectations. So there's different ways of saying that in a negative way. You can say, yeah, I thought you would do this, but you didn't meet my expectations. Okay? So yeah, there's different ways of saying that. Okay, let's go on. So the Indian Army said justice is served, reporting 9 terrorist camps had been destroyed, with New Delhi adding that its actions have been focused, measured, and non-escalatory in nature. So there's interesting words here. Now this is the Indian, I don't know, 国防部 or 陆军 or whatever. It says justice is served. When someone says justice is served, what does that mean? Serve is like, to service, right? So if you say justice has been served or justice is served, what do you think that means? Any ideas? What's justice? Yeah, something that's fair and good, right? If you go to the what is it? I think it's over here, right? The 台中地方法院, or and you go there for a case. What do most people want? They want justice, right? You think, he stole my money, or he did something wrong to me, or I need something from you. I want justice, okay? The court's job is to provide justice, okay? So when the government says, or the army says, justice is served, that means that justice has been done. It's been provided. It means it's been given, okay? So they're basically saying our attack on Pakistan serves justice. They did something bad to us, so now we are going to find justice. We're going to make this right. Okay, so this is just another way of saying that. Justice is served, okay? And the army reported 9 terrorist camps. Now notice here they use these quotation marks because this is what the Indian Army said. I mean, we don't really know if it really is, 真正的是这样子, but they said it is a terrorist camp. Now terrorist is what? 恐怖分子, right? So camp is their base, right? Like their GD or something. They're saying that 9 terrorist camps have been destroyed, okay? With New Delhi, this is the Indian government, adding that its actions, its 动作, have been focused, okay? If your action is focused, you know what focus is, right? When you read something, your eyes will focus on it, right? It means you're very focused on something. You're paying attention to one specific thing. So if you say that my actions have been focused, it means that my actions, they're not just 随便. It's not just 乱. It's like my actions have a very specific purpose and focus. I've been doing this for a reason. There's one focus, okay? I'm not just attacking you because I'm angry or because, I'm just kind of want to attack you. There's a purpose for that. There's a focus, okay? So our actions have been focused, measured. Okay, now measured is an interesting word here. I don't think we've ever talked about this. If your actions are measured, it's another way, measure usually means to measure, how long something is, how big something is. But when we say our actions are measured, usually it means that they are limited. 有限. It means that I'm controlling. They're under control. I'm not just, again, 随便 or, doing my actions. There's a very measured response. I'll give you an idea. Let's say somebody attacks you. Not really attacks you, but they 批评. They criticize you very strongly. And you have maybe some choices to your response, right? I could get very angry, and I could 骂他们, and I could shout at them. But if you say my reply or my response was measured, it means that I controlled my response. Maybe I didn't shout at him. Maybe I just said, okay, so that's the way you think. Here's what I think. And I try to limit and control my response, my reply. So measured means that we limit and we control what we do. It's under control. Okay. So India says our actions are focused, they're measured, they're under a limit, and they're non-escalatory. Now, here's that word again. Remember we talked about escalate, right? Now we take this word and we say escalatory. Escalatory would be like a 副词, right? Like escalatory action would be like something that creates more and more and more. But here, what do they say? Of course, we said to de-escalate, right? But here now we say non-escalatory. Actually, this is more of a 形容词, escalatory action or escalatory, fighting. But here it says non-escalatory. It means those actions were not designed to increase. They're designed to be, to not make things worse, but to keep things under control. They don't want this to escalate into a full war. That's, I think, what they're trying to say. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So if we say something is non-escalatory, it means it's not designed to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's designed to keep things under control. So I think India, that what they're trying to say here is they're trying to say, we're not trying to just make this into a big war. We're trying to keep it under control. It's focused on some specific goals, 目标, and we don't want to make it, we don't want things to grow. Okay? So these are good words. Let's say it together. Focused. Focused. Measured. Measured. And this one's kind of tricky. Let's first say this. Escalatory. Escalatory. Non-escalatory. Non-escalatory. Okay, yeah, it's kind of a long word. Okay, so let's read this together. The Indian Army said, justice is served. Reporting 9 terrorist camps. Let's say it again. Terrorist camps had been destroyed. With New Delhi adding that its actions have been focused, measured, and non-escalatory. One more time. Non-escalatory in nature. Okay, when we say in nature, I think you know what that means, but it means in sometimes we say in essence, right? How do I put this? It means at its core. I don't know if you know what I mean. It means in principle, in our idea, in our basic level, in our basic like 主义 or our goal or 目标. Basically, we could say that basically. Basically, or in nature, it means in the nature of this, in the way we want to do this, in our goal, what we want to achieve. This is what we're trying to do. Does everyone understand it when we say in nature? For example, we say he has a very good nature. It means his heart at his inside is very good. Or we could, what? Yeah, it means at its core, at its middle, its heart, its base, yeah. Now we could say the opposite, right? You could say he has a very evil nature or bad nature or his, yeah. But yeah, here they're saying at the heart of something, in the middle of something, at the base of something, at the, the 主义, the main idea in nature, okay? This is what we're trying to do. Okay, hopefully that's clear. Okay, so let's go on. Well, that's a photo caption. Okay, so here we have Pakistan and how they respond. It says Pakistani Minister of Defense. This is like the 国防部部长. Khawaja Mohammad Asif, okay, accused Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that's their president, their leader, of launching strikes to shore up his domestic popularity, adding that Islamabad won't take long to settle the score. Now, this is a little bit alarming when he says that, right? But the 国防部部长 says that the Indian Prime Minister is launching strikes. He's starting these attacks on Pakistan to shore up his domestic popularity. You know what popularity is, right? If you're popular, you want, of course, most leaders want their popularity to go up, right? They don't want their popularity to go down. So it means how popular you are, how many people like you. So let's say this together. First of all, let's start with the base word. Popular. Popular. Popularity. Popularity. Okay, so he wants to shore up his domestic. Now, domestic, what does this mean? We talked about this before. Yeah, 国内, right? Your 国内 popularity. Not his international popularity, but his local, internal popularity. So why don't we say it together? Domestic. Domestic. So this is a very interesting expression. If you want to shore up something, what does that mean? Step up, yeah, we could say that. I'm thinking of another word. It's to, basically it means to make stronger. If you want to shore something up, it means you want to make it more firm. You want to make it stronger. Let's say, I'll give you a simple example. Let's say this wall is damaged and it looks like it's going to fall down, like it's going to fall over. So then maybe we call some workers and they try to put on some supports. They put on some support to shore up the wall. Basically means to support the wall so it doesn't fall over. So we use this word shore up to make, it means to make stronger, to support it, okay? So why don't we say together, shore up. Shore up. So basically Pakistan says, you're attacking us to make yourself, your popularity go up inside India, you know, make more people support you. But he says Islamabad, Pakistan, won't take long to settle the score. Now, this is a very common expression. What does this mean, to settle the score? Have you ever heard this before? You say, I am going to settle my score with him, or I'm going to settle the score between him and me. What does that mean? I'll give you a clue. There's a very common expression. If someone says something bad to you, what do you want to do to them? You want to, yes, get back, or sometimes we say to, so that's a G, get even. Does everybody know that expression? He attacked me, so I'm going to get even with him. Basically, what it means is, it's another way of saying I want to get revenge. You know what revenge is, right? He did something to me, I'm going to do something back to him. Okay? You attack me, I'm going to attack you. You attack me, I'm going to attack you. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. Okay? I'm going to get even with you. So to settle the score means, like, score is like, you know, 分数, right? So if he attacked me, I'm going to attack you. I'm going to settle that score. I'm going to make it even. I'm going to get even. Means I'm going to make things balanced again. I'm going to do what you did to me. Okay? Everybody understand that? So this is a very common expression. You know, even when we're kids, you know, when we're children, somebody does something bad, you know, like, I'm going to get even with him. He did something. Now, sometimes it's kind of a joke, right? Somebody plays a joke on you, so you think, I'm going to get even with you sometime. You watch. You wait. I'm going to play a joke on you, too. But it means to get even. Settle the score has a little bit more of a serious sound to it. It means that I'm going to take revenge on you. I'm going to do something against you, too. Okay? So let's say it together. To settle the score. To settle the score. Let's say this one, too. To get even. To get even. And then usually when we say this word, we add this word here. Let's say this. To take revenge. To take revenge. Right, yeah. So these are all the kind of the similar ideas, right? So he says, we won't take long to settle the score, which is kind of frightening, right? Because you're like, okay, what are they going to do, right? What's their plan, okay? So anyhow, let's read this together. Pakistani Minister of Defense. Minister of Defense. Khawaja Muhammad Asif accused Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi of launching the strikes to shore up his domestic popularity. Let's say it again. Domestic popularity. Adding that Islamabad won't take long to settle the score. Okay, yeah, so this is kind of, I don't know, doesn't sound good. Okay, so it says, military spokesman Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry said 5 Indian jets had been downed across the border. An Indian senior security source, who asked not to be named, said 3 of its fighter jets had crashed on home territory. Okay, I think it says military spokesman. This must be the Pakistani military spokesman. He said 5 Indian jets, 战斗机, had been downed. When you say downed, it doesn't mean they landed. It means they were shot down, right? They were hit and they crashed, so they were downed. If you say we downed a jet, it means we shot down a jet. Okay, so they were downed across the border. An Indian senior security source, so this is somebody, some Indian military source, who asked not to be named. When we say he asked not to be named, what's the word we use for that? Yes, very good. So we say they are who. We could say they asked to be anonymous. And anonymous means no name. Do not use my name. So we could say they asked to be anonymous. Or we could say an anonymous source, right? Somebody who's not using their name. Why don't we say it together? Anonymous. Anonymous. Okay, so they said, the Indians said that 3 of its fighter jets had crashed or we could say on home territory, means inside India, not Pakistan. Okay, so the Pakistanis said they shot down 5 jets, and the Indians said we lost 3 jets. So there's a difference of opinion there. Okay, so let's read this. Military spokesman Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry said 5 Indian jets had been downed across the border. An Indian senior security source who asked not to be named said 3 of its fighter jets had crashed on home territory. Okay. Now, of course, I just want to remind you once again, downed is a 动词 here. Means they downed them, they shot them down. They were downed. Okay. Usually down is not a 形容词, not a 动词. Okay. Okay, let's see how much we have here. Okay. Okay, let's just read 1 or 2 more paragraphs and then we can go to a different story. So it says here, a hydropower plant in Kashmir was also targeted by India, damaging a dam structure after India threatened to stop the flow of water on its side of the border, Pakistan said. Okay. So does anyone know what hydropower is? So first of all, when we see the word hydro, H-Y-D-R-O, what does that refer to? Good word. What? No, I think you're thinking of hyper, H-Y-P-E-R. But hydro, whenever you see the word hydro, think of one thing, water. Hydro refers to water. So if you know that, it will help you with many other words. So hydropower means electrical power that comes from water, right? So how do we generate power with water? We use a what? We use a dam. And what is a dam? 水坝, right? Okay. So if you go up to, Gu Guan or one of these places, you'll see or Shimen Shuiku, right? You'll see a dam, and then the water goes through the dam, and they use that to generate electricity, 电力, right? So we call that a hydropower plant, like a factory. So why don't we say it together? Hydropower. Hydropower. Okay, I want to give you one example of this word that we've never used this before or learned this before. It's a 动词. To hydrate, okay? It's a good word. So if you say, I need to stay hydrated, or I need to hydrate myself, it means that I need to drink more water. You know, there's this 广告 on TV, it says, 多喝水, right? Okay? So that means to hydrate, means to keep enough water in your body. And so, you know, when it's very hot outside, you know, Taiwan, it's very hot. People like to, you know, they often do, right? They sweat. And then they say, or if you're 运动, you're exercising, it's very important that you need to hydrate. Or sometimes we also say to stay, hydrated. Then it becomes a kind of a 形容词. To stay hydrated. So it's important that we stay hydrated by drinking lots of water. Okay. Drinking lots of beer will not keep you hydrated, or coffee probably not too, because caffeine usually makes water go out of your body. So to hydrate or to stay hydrated. So notice that this sounds very similar to hydro, right? Hydrate has to do with water. Okay? So that's a good word. We've never learned that word before, but it's a very similar. So whenever you see hydro, think about water. Okay. So let's say it together. To hydrate. To hydrate. To stay hydrated. To stay hydrated. Okay. So a hydropower plant in Kashmir was targeted. It was like a 目标 for an Indian attack. 目的. Okay. Damaging the dam structure. So there's a 水坝. It damaged the dam. Okay. Dam, of course, D-A-M, dam. After India threatened to stop the flow of water on its side of the border. So I think, if I remember correctly, India and Pakistan have an agreement, and India provides water to Pakistan. Some of the water that comes from India that goes through to Pakistan. So they threatened to stop this water going into Pakistan, which of course is not a good thing for Pakistan. Okay, so let's read this together. A hydropower plant in Kashmir was also targeted by India, damaging a dam structure. Dam structure. After India threatened to stop the flow of water on its side of the border. Pakistan said. Okay. Okay. One more paragraph and then this last short paragraph. Okay? So it says here, Pakistan had earlier warned that tampering with the rivers that flow into its territory would be an act of war. Okay, so there's a good word here. They warned, okay, they 警告. Pakistan warned that tampering with the rivers that flow into its territory would be an act of war. What's this word to tamper? T-A-M-P-E-R. It's a 动词. What does that mean? Does anyone know? I don't think we've ever learned this word. Tamper means to, what's a good way of putting it? It means to play around with something, to change it, to mess with it. That's not very clear. Basically, if you tamper with something, it means you change it. You do something to it. Okay? Let me think of something. Okay. There are certain things like for emergencies. For example, you know, in most buildings, there is a fire alarm, right? You pull it if there's a fire, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like, I don't know, in Taiwan, I think they have this, right? If you see there's a fire, and you pull this alarm, and then there's alarm goes off, right? And everybody runs out of the building. So usually when you see something like that, it says, do not tamper with this device. Or, you know, if you see, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something else. There are certain things that are only for emergencies. Oh, I'll give you an example. When you ride the Taichung, you know, the Jieyun, the MRT, right? There's usually an emergency thing that you can pull or a button you can push, right? You should never tamper with that. Meaning you can't sleep in, change it or play with it or try to pull it. That's called tampering. You're doing something that you should not do. Maybe you should only touch it when it's an emergency or play with. Okay, so that's called tampering. What? Yeah, but it's a little bit more than that. Okay, I'll give you one more example. I just thought of this. You know, we all have like our 护照, right? Our passports, right? When you get a passport, you're not allowed to tamper with your passport, right? You can't write on it, or you can't change the photograph, or you can't, you know, add something to it. You should, or, you know, change the cover. You're not supposed to do that, right? That's illegal. And if you do, the passport's probably, you have to 丢掉. It's no longer good. So that's called tampering with something. It means to change it or to do something to it, okay? To change it, okay? So yeah, it's kind of a hard word to understand, but it's a basic word. So why don't we say it together? To tamper. To tamper. Tampering. Tampering. So basically it says tampering with the rivers that flow into its territory. So there's rivers that provide water to Pakistan. They're saying if you touch those, if you try to change those, if you do something to those rivers that affects our water, that is an act of war. That means that's like starting a war with us. That's like the beginning of a 战争, because this is, you know, serious, right? They need water. Everybody needs water. Does everybody understand that? Any questions on that? Okay. So let's read this together. Pakistan had earlier warned that tampering with the rivers that flow into its territory would be an act of war. Act of war. Right. So, you know, act of war means something that begins a war, right? Taiwan has said, you know, if China tried to blockade, you know, Taiwan, you know, they tried to block it, you know, so that nobody can, that is an act of war. Basically, you're starting a war. So yeah, this is a common expression, common word. Okay, are there any final questions before we go to a different article? Any questions about this? Any words? Or, yeah, I mean, I hope, I mean, everybody hopes, of course, you know, we're pleading with Pakistan and India, do not go further. Do not make this worse. Do not escalate this conflict, right? Don't escalate it. In fact, you should de-escalate the conflict, make it less. But in this, you know, I don't know, Pakistan and India, they just always have these conflicts. I mean, this is, since they, you know, started as countries, there's been this challenge, this issue. So anyhow, hopefully, we'll see this quiet down and settle down, and yeah, hopefully it's not a big deal. Okay. Okay, let me just find something here. I want to read this article because I know this is a bit technical, but it's been in the news all over the world. I was kind of surprised, actually. I've never seen so much international coverage or so much international news about the Taiwan dollar. I mean, all the international media, 媒体, have been writing about Taipei, the Taiwan dollar, over the last several days. I was very surprised, actually. But as you know, there's a reason for this. What has happened to the Taiwan dollar the last couple days? It has gone up. Excuse me. We could say the Taiwan dollar has, actually, if I was going to use an expression, I would say that the Taiwan dollar has exploded in value. That's a U. Sorry. U. Okay. When we say exploded in value, what does that mean? Well, what's value? Value is how much something is worth, right? Yeah, if I say, what's the value of your car? And you say, oh, well, right now it's an old car, so maybe the value is only, 1块, right? It's a cheap car. Or if you say, what's the value of your house? And you say, oh, my house, the price has been going up and up and up, and so now the value is quite high. So if we say the Taiwan dollar has exploded, what does explode mean? Yeah, it means to blow up, right? So if we say the NT dollar, the Taipei, the Taiwan dollar, has exploded in value, it means the value has really gone up. It's exploded, it's shot up, okay? So the Taiwan dollar in the last 3 or 4 days exploded in value when we compare it to the 美金, to the American dollar. To be very honest, it's not helped me because I make some money in US dollars, right? So the value of my money has gone down. But if you have Taipei, and I think most of you do, it's good for you because it means the value of your money has gone up. Now, if you decide to take a vacation and go to 美国 tomorrow, you can buy a lot more with your Taipei than you could about a week ago, right? But for me, if I'm making money in US dollars, then it means the value of my money in Taiwan has gone down because when I exchange my money, I get less Taipei for my US dollar. So it's a big deal. I mean, this is very interesting, and I was kind of surprised because I'll be honest, my friends who know this, who understand this, they have been talking for many years, not just months. They've been telling for many years. They said the U.S. dollar is going to go down. The U.S. dollar is going to go down. The U.S. dollar is going to drop, and I was like, okay, when, And then finally, the U.S. dollar is going down. Okay. So anyhow, here this is not today's article. It's actually yesterday's article. But let's read it because this is in the news a lot. So it says here, the NT dollar steadies, focus turns to tariffs. Okay. And then it says cautious, the local currency stabilization has contributed to gains in financial stocks, but concerns over potential semiconductor tariffs have kept investor sentiment cautious. There's some words here. So first of all, the NT dollar steadies. If something steadies, what does that mean? Well, what does the word steady mean? S-T-E-A-D-Y. What does that mean? Stable. Yes, good. Stable. So we could say stable. So if we want to take the word stable, which is the same as steady, and we want to turn it into a 形容词, we could say it what? Stable. Stabilizes. It steadies. It stabilizes. So if you're in a ship in the ocean, the ship is like this. But then the ship settles down and it's not moving. We can say the ship stabilized or steadied. Okay? So it's the same idea. So why don't we say together steady. Steady. And then this word steadies. Steadies. Okay, and then this word stable. Stable. And then as a 动词, stabilizes. Stabilizes. Okay, so the NT dollar it went up very quickly, but now it's stable. Okay, focus, okay, means the focus, we talked about this word earlier. We said India is focusing on something. So the focus, now the attention. Another way of saying this, we could say attention. Your attention on something. What are you paying attention to? Now, the attention, the public attention or the government attention is on what? On tariffs. And we talked about this before. What is a tariff? Everybody's talking about this now. 关税. Donald Trump says he loves tariffs, right? So why don't we say together, tariffs. Tariffs. Okay, so cautious. You know what cautious means, right? If you're very cautious, it means you're very careful, right? You're a little bit cautious, okay? And if we say caution, it means you need to be careful, okay? Sometimes you see a sign that says, caution, no smoking. You know, don't 抽烟 around here because maybe there's gasoline or something. So why don't we say together, cautious. Cautious. Okay, so then it says the local currency stabilization, see that word is related to that. Stabilization, this becomes a 名词, okay, has contributed to gains in financial stocks. Okay, so what is a currency? Currency is another word for what? Money, yeah. What's Taiwan's currency? The NT dollar, the new Taiwan dollar, right? What's the US currency? The American dollar. What's the Japanese currency? The yen, right? So we say the local currency stabilization has contributed to, okay, means added to. You know, contribute means to give, right? So if we say to add to, gains in the financial stocks, because, so when this stabilized, it means that the 股票, 股市 went up. They gained, it went up, okay? But concerns over, what are they concerned about? Or we could say worries over potential semiconductor tariffs. Okay, semiconductor is 半导体. Remember this? Tariffs, 关税. Okay, but here it says potential. What would be another word for potential? Also starts with P-O. Instead of potential, we say possible. Yes, good. So we could say possible, potential. It means maybe, okay, possible or potential semiconductor tariffs have kept investors, investor, this is a 形容词, investor sentiment cautious. Now, this is a very interesting word. I don't think we've learned this word before. But sentiment sounds like a big word, but there's a very much simpler word to say sentiment. If you say, what are your sentiments about this? Or he has what is another word for sentiment? Starts with an F. Yes, very good. Feeling. What is my feeling about something? What are my sentiments? Or what is my sentiment about something? It means the way I feel about something. So why don't we say, it's a good word. Feeling, of course, is a much more common word. Why don't we say together, sentiment? Sentiment. Okay. So it's kept investor sentiment cautious. So basically, investors, you know, 投资者, even though the stock market has gone up and the Type E is now more stable, they're very cautious because they're worried about possible semiconductor tariffs, 半导体关税, right, or 关税 on 半导体. Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, these are some good words. Okay, so let's read the article. Okay, it says, the new Taiwan dollar showed signs of stabilizing yesterday after a recent surge, but local shares still close slightly lower as investors remain concerned over possible U.S. tariffs on semiconductor imports. Okay, so of course we say NT, New Taiwan Dollar, showed signs of stabilizing. So again, there's that word stabilizing. So it showed there were some signs that the dollar, the Type E is stabilizing. It's becoming more stable, okay? Yesterday, after a recent surge, and we've talked about this word before. What does surge mean? What? Yeah, it means, well, it means like a big increase. Like a, let me say, if something suddenly becomes very popular, 很流行，突然 we say there was a surge of interest in something, or a surge of popularity of something. It means suddenly it became very popular. It's like a wave, like a 海浪, right? A surge. Like surge we talk about is water. There's a surge of water, or the water is surging down the river. It's moving very rapidly, and there's a lot of water moving down the river. So if we say there was a surge in the 台币, it means it increased very suddenly. Or if we say there was a surge in the stock market, 股市, it means the stock market suddenly went up. Okay? So surge, yes, appreciation or a growth or a sudden. But the key is sudden, 突然. It means quickly, sudden. Okay? Not, if it's just 慢慢的, then it's, little by little, then it's not, we can't say surge. But if we say there's a surge, that means it's sudden. It happens suddenly. Let's say it together. Surge. Surge. Okay. I'm trying to think of something that suddenly became popular in Taiwan recently. I don't know. If there's a new movie star, Ming Xing, right? We might say there's a surge of interest in this person, this movie star, or this music, or this song, or this band, or this something like that. Okay. So after the recent surge, but local shares, this is of course talking about the 股票, still closed slightly lower as investors remain concerned. They're worried, 担心, over what? Over possible. There's that word possible. We talked about the word potential. Now we use the word possible. U.S. tariffs on semiconductor imports. Now, of course, that means imports from Taiwan into 美国. Okay? So let's say this word together. It's a long word. Semiconductor. Semiconductor. Yeah, big word. Okay, so let's read this together. The new Taiwan dollar showed signs of stabilizing. Stabilizing. Yesterday, after a recent surge. Surge. But local shares still closed slightly lower as investors remained concerned. Let's say it again. Investors remained concerned. Concerned over possible U.S. tariffs. Tariffs on semiconductor imports. One more time. Semiconductor imports. Okay. I'll be honest with you. The U.S. could put tariffs on semiconductor imports, but it's not going to help the Americans. It will actually make things more expensive. Actually, I don't think it will hurt the Taiwanese too much because everybody needs Taiwan semiconductors. And so if the U.S. government says, okay, you have to pay tariffs, okay, who's paying those tariffs? I think it's not Taiwanese, it's Americans are really paying those prices because, it's not like they can buy them from somewhere else, So anyhow, I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so here it says that NT dollar reversed its steep rise in the previous two sessions, closing down 0.135 or 0.45% at 30.280 against the US dollar in Taipei trading. Okay, I don't want to read all these numbers, but basically here it says the NT dollar reversed its steep rise. Now steep means what? Normally if you're walking down a road and suddenly it becomes steep, what does that mean? What's the Chinese word? Is it dou? Right? Steep? Like if a road is flat and then this road starts to go up very quickly, we say the road is very, is it dou? Is that the word? Yeah. So we can say the road is very steep. or the mountain, hiking up the mountain, the mountain trail, was very steep. It means it went up, it goes up this way, like this. This is not steep, this is steep, okay? So when it says the NT dollar reversed, it's steep rise. Of course, steep rise means very quick rise, right? When we say it reversed, it's steep rise. What does reverse mean? To go back, right? When you drive a car, 汽车, when you see R on the gears, right? You hit R, it means reverse, right? It means to go backwards. So when it says the US dollar, sorry, not the US dollar, the NT dollar reversed its steep rise, it means that it was going up very steep, but then it reversed. It means it went down, or it went the other direction. In previous 2 sessions, when we say a session, it means like a trading time, a time to trade the dollar, okay? And it closed down. It was down by this much, okay, by this percent and that amount against the US dollar in Taipei trading. Okay, I don't want to read all these numbers, but just so you understand, steep. Okay, let's read this together. Steep. Steep. Trying to think of other words that would be like, you could say the road goes steeply, S-T-E-E-P-L-Y. That becomes a 副词, right? It goes steeply uphill or steeply downhill, right? So I'm trying to get this idea across. If the road goes steeply downhill, it means it's still steep, but you're going down, the road is going down very steeply. And if you're going steeply uphill, it means it's suddenly going up very steeply. I still remember when I was about 7 岁, about 7 years old, my family lived in Hawaii, Hawaii, for 1 year. And I remember we went to visit some friends. And if you've been to Hawaii, Honolulu, the 首都 of Hawaii, there's the city, and then there's these hills around the city that go up. And there's many houses up on the hills. And I remember we went to visit, and it's funny because many of these houses are up on the side of the mountain, and the roads that go up to these houses are really steep. It's really amazing. You're driving, and then the car starts going like this, right? And you're like, and I remember as a child being very scared because I'm like, this road is going, and then I remember my father pulled over, and he parked the car on the side of the road, and I'm thinking, are the brakes good enough? Is the car going to roll down the mountain, Because the car was like this, I was really shocked. But I remember just a few years ago, I went to visit a friend who lives in Taipei in Beitou. And the road was super steep. In fact, his house was right at the end of the road, near the end of the road on the mountain. And it was very funny. I was in a 计程车, and the taxi driver was going up the hill, and he got pretty close, not all the way. And then he asked me, can we stop here? You can get off the car here? And I was like, yeah, sure, that's okay. But I think he was actually scared because the road was so steep, okay? So yeah, it was kind of funny. So anyhow, let's say that together one more time. Steep. Steep. Okay. So that we don't have to read all those numbers. Let's go to the next paragraph. Okay. It says, the NT dollar led volatile moves in Asia earlier this month, surging as much as 5% against the US dollar on Monday, its biggest single-day gain since the 1980s. That's a long time ago. So there's some interesting words here. What does this word mean? I don't know if we've ever studied this word, but this is a very good word. If something is volatile, what does that mean? Does anyone know? What? Well, dramatically, but volatile has another idea too. I'll give you the original idea of volatile. If you have something that is volatile, it means it can catch fire or explode very easily. So what is volatile? Chio, right? Geo, right? Chio, gas, right? If you have gasoline and you light a flame, it'll explode, right? Or, 瓦斯, 天然瓦斯, natural gas. you should never have fire near gas. I mean, of course, unless you're cooking. But if you have, natural gas, you should never have. It's very volatile. It'll explode. So something that's volatile means it'll catch fire. It'll start a fire, or it'll explode very easily. So when we say the stock market or the currency or anything is volatile, what does that mean? It means it is quite, there's another word I'm thinking, it starts with a U. It is very, what? Think about this word. Unstable, yes. It's unstable. Because something that explodes or catches fire very easily, it means it's not stable, right? Something can suddenly happen. So when we say something is volatile, it means that it's up and down, it's not stable, it's who knows what's going to happen. It could explode. We don't know, okay? So it's a very good word. Now, I will say something. This word can be used in many different ways. If you say his personality, his 个性, is very volatile, or he is a very volatile person, it means he's very unstable. Maybe you're talking to him and you say something, he seems very calm, and you say something, and suddenly he gets really angry, right? And he explodes. He's like, what? How can you say that? And you're like, wow, okay, this person is really volatile, okay? Or you can say he has a volatile temper. We say someone has a bad temper, right? A volatile temper means his temper is very bad. It can explode. Okay? Does everybody understand that word? It's a good word. So why don't we say it together? Volatile. Volatile. Okay, so the NT dollar led. It means it was on the front of these volatile moves in Asia. I mean, Asia, the Ya'zhou, the currency, everything, the stock market was very up and down, very unstable. Earlier this month, surging, the NT dollar surged. So there's the word surge. Surging as much as 5% against the US dollar on Monday. So on Monday, it went up by as much as 5%. I mean, that's a big gain. That's like I said, exploding in value. Its biggest single-day gain since the 1980s, which is kind of shocking. I mean, just in one day for a currency to go up by as much as 5%. That's a big deal. I will say this. I was thinking about this the other day. I still remember, I think maybe some of you, not all of you, but some of you are old enough to remember this. When I was a child, you remember this? The Taipei to US dollar was 40 to 1. You remember that? I still was thinking about it. I was thinking, wow, I still remember that. But yeah, now it's very different. So anyhow, let's read this together. The NT dollar led volatile moves. Let's say it again. Volatile moves in Asia earlier this month, surging as much as 5% against the US dollar on Monday. On Monday, its biggest single-day gain since the 1980s. Now, of course, when we say gain, I mean, that means increase, right? The biggest gain. But here, of course, this becomes a 形容词, the single-day gain. The gain, the increase in one day. That's the biggest it's gone up in one day since the 1980s. Okay, that's a photo caption. So let's read this again. Let's read the next paragraph. It says, the rally was fueled by exporters rushing to convert US dollar holdings and signs that life insurers might have been hedging their greenback denominated portfolios. Okay, there's a lot of financial words here. But first of all, when we say a rally, rally has two different ideas. This rally means increase, like a big growth or big increase. So if we say the stock market, the 股市 rallied, it means it went up very quickly. It grew, it went up, Rally has another meaning. I think we've talked about it. Like if you have, like, for example, like a 选举, right, an election, and we have an election rally, it means lots of people have a big meeting, gathering, right? And they all come together to cheer for their 候选人, their candidate, right? We could have other kinds of rallies too. It could be a 抗议, right? If you have lots of people coming together to 抗议 something, we could say it's a protest rally. But here, this is a rally means the stock market rallied. It went up, okay? It was fueled by. If we say it was fueled by something, what does that mean? It was what? It was what? What? Yeah, it was caused by, triggered by, yeah. What fueled this? What caused this? Fuel is like, how do you say fuel in Chinese? Fuel is like gas, right? Something you give, like it's energy, fuel, right? So it was fueled by, of course this is a 动词, by what? What caused this? Okay? Exporters, of course export means your 出口, right? Exporters rushing to convert. Convert means what? To change, yes, to change US dollar holdings. Okay, so when you convert US dollar holdings, it means I hold this US dollars. I have these things in US dollars and I want to convert them. I want to change them. Maybe I want to buy Thai B instead, or I want to buy some other currency instead. So I want to change. I want to get out of US dollar holdings. Also, there are signs, there's like evidence, there's signs that life insurance, life insurance is very popular in Taiwan, right? 保险, right? I think probably all of you and myself, we all have maybe some kind of life insurance, might have been hedging their greenback denominated portfolios. Now this is complicated. Portfolio, we've never talked about this. Portfolio is your investments. It means the money all the things that you have invested. So if I ask you, I say, what is your portfolio, your investment portfolio? You might say something like this. You might say, well, 20% of my portfolio is in Taiwanese stock, 股市, and 20% of my investment portfolio is in bonds, government bonds, and 30% of my portfolio is in 房地产, okay? And I bought 5% of my portfolio is in gold, 黄金. So that's like, portfolio is like your investment, what you own, what you have invested, that amount, that total. It's like everything, okay? So this word gets used in many different ways. It's very interesting. I'll give you one completely different idea. If you are an artist, like a 艺术家, okay, or somebody especially as a student, right, and you want, as you're starting as an artist, right, 艺术家, you will create your own portfolio. And what that means is that as you draw pictures, you paint, right, you will save these pictures and you will create a collection. Actually, that's a good word, collection of your own art, okay? So that, let's say I want to go to the 国美馆 one day and I want to 展览 my pictures, and maybe they don't know me, and I come to them and I say, hey, I'm a good artist, I've been doing many things, and people say, well, how do I know, what kind of artist are you? Can I see your portfolio? And you say, okay, now usually it's on a computer or something, right? It's not like you show them the pictures, but you show them these pictures of all the art that you have created. And you say, this is my art portfolio. This is what I have done. And they say, oh, wow, this looks really amazing. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll have an exhibition. So it could be something like that, too. It could be something that you create, like a collection of something that represents, 代表 what you have done as an artist or even as a 音乐家, like a musician. What kind of music have you created? Yeah, there's many different kinds of portfolios. But it's almost like a collection. But here it means, of course, what I have invested, my total investment. So it's a little bit of an interesting word. And we haven't talked about it before, but let's say it together, portfolio. 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 Okay, yeah, it's a little bit complicated. Now, it says here, greenback denominated. Now, you should probably guess, you know what greenback is, right? US dollar. Now, it's a very funny word because if you look at US dollars today, they're not green. They're kind of what, gray? Or I don't know, they're some other color. But this is a very traditional word for Meiji. We say a greenback because, I don't know, you can read about this. Maybe it's green. I don't know. But it used to be the dollar, you know, the bill, the paper, had a green back to it. So we called it a greenback. And today we still use that word. We say a greenback. So basically it means they're US dollar denominated. It means they're using US dollars. A denomination is a kind of money. Like, this word is kind of complicated, but basically it means what currency are you using? So if you say, when you travel, what denomination do you like to use? Most people probably say, oh, I like to use US dollars because I can exchange them anywhere, right? Or you might say, what denomination do you take when you travel? Oh, I take Taipei because now I can use it. Okay, so here it says greenback denominated. It becomes a 形容词 portfolios. So these life insurance companies had most of their portfolio in US dollars, but they've been hedging. Now, sorry, there's a lot of new words here. Hedge means, this is a very financial term. It means that you try to protect yourself against something. So let's say, for example, if I buy US dollars, but I want to balance my investment, let's say I'm worried that the US dollar is going to go down. What do? I start to buy other denominations. Maybe I buy Japanese yen or Australian dollars or renminbi or something else. But I try to hedge. Hedge means I try to balance or protect myself against something from happening. So if I buy 股市, let's say I invest a lot of money in Taiwan 股市, and I want to hedge my investments, what do? I try to also buy other stocks in other countries because I want to balance I want to protect my investment. Does everybody understand that idea? Okay. There's a very common expression. Sorry, we're almost done here, but there's a very common expression. Let me just share this with you. We say he tried to hedge his bets. Now, bet is when you 赌博, right? You bet money, right? If you hedge your bet, this is an expression. It means that I do something, but I do something else to protect myself in case this doesn't work. Okay? It's a very common expression. Let's say I have a plan. I say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to have this plan. But just in case, I have another plan. I have another thing. If this doesn't work, we'll do this. So I'm trying to hedge my bets. Okay? So that's what they're saying here is they find that many life insurance companies, 保险公司, they have all this stuff in US dollars, but they're also putting money in other places to balance to protect their investments or protect their portfolio, their investment portfolio. A little bit complicated. Why don't we say this expression here? Hedge his bets. Hedge my bets. Okay, let's say this word, greenback. Greenback. Denominated. Denominated. Okay. So let's read this paragraph and then we'll be done for today. It says, the rally was fueled by exporters rushing to convert US dollar holdings. Let's say it again, US dollar holdings. And signs that life insurers might have been hedging their greenback denominated portfolios. Okay, so anyhow, it's very interesting to watch this. To be honest, I really hope the Taiwan dollar does not go up anymore. I wanted to stabilize because it's not good for me. But again, maybe I'm sure you're happy. Yeah. So, okay, good. Well, that's all we have time for today. I just want to say something. I appreciate you coming. There aren't many people today, but it was good. We had a good class. I will try in the future. I will do my best. I'm trying to do a better job. As I really want to, I know some people say they have to take the bus home after this. So I want to try to really start on time at 10 o'clock, and then we'll probably try to end more closely to 10:40 or 10:45 so that people can go home and, oh, sorry, not 10:45, 11:45. Yeah, so that people can go and eat lunch and get home. So, okay, thank you very much, and we'll see you on 5月22号. Yeah, not next week, but the week after. Thank you.